All right, 3 o'clock chat here. In a surprising move, the Milwaukee Bucks have waived Damian Lillard. The $113 million left on his contract is going to be stretched, meaning the Bucks will pay Dame $22.5 million over the next 5 years. For the first time in his career, Lillard is going to be able to pick his next team as a free agent. In addition, Milwaukee agreed to a 4-year, $107 million deal with Miles Turner, who was the longest tenured Pacers player, having spent 10 years in Indiana. Elsewhere, Jakob Poeltl and the Raptors agree on a 4-year deal worth $104 million. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and OKC agree to a 4-year supermax, $285 million. The Nuggets now have a legit backup to Nikola Jokic. They trade Dario Saric to the Kings for Jonas Valanciunas. And from the NFL, Darren Waller is coming out of retirement to join the Dolphins. Miami sending a 6th-round pick to the Giants, who held his rights in return for the veteran tight end. Rip City Drive with Chad Doings coming up next. Alex Brink at 3:20, The Godfather at 4:20.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Doing.
Swinging a fly ball into deep center field. Going back his belt to the one. He tracked the wall. He does it again. Randy Arozarena with a second home run in back-to-back at-bats. A 3-run shot into the J-Rod squad.
Swung on a drive, center field, his belt back, he's at the track, he's looking up, makes a jump, it's over his glove, it is gone! Cal Raleigh has done it again! Another home run! Number 33 is in the seats!
Swinging a fly ball straight away center field. Julio is there, backpedals, stops, reaches up, and he makes the catch, and the ball game is over. The Mariners win it tonight over the Royals by a score of 6-2.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
All right, what's going on, my friends? Rip City Drive. Coming up on the show today, we got a 4-pack of tickets so you can sit in the Rip City Radio Row at a Hillsborough Hops game. We'll give those away at 5 o'clock. The Godfather, Dwight James, has agreed to jump on the show at 4:20, and my good friend Alex Brink is going to talk some ball at 3:20 on the show. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so on social media. You'll find me there at Chad and Rip City. You can call the show, 503-248-0620. That's the telephone number. And, of course, you can always listen on our free iHeartRadio app. You can stream the show there. Just pull up Rip City Radio 620. You can podcast. All of the interviews are up there, and it's a great way to interact. So I appreciate your time. It's great to have you on this Tuesday, another spectacular day weather-wise here in the Northwest. It was beautiful this morning. The temperatures are warm as we approach the 4th of July. We're in July. Summertime is here, my friends. So a lot of good things to talk about today, and I want to start with this before we get to Alex Brink. Kind of surprising news out of the NBA, but the Milwaukee Bucks decided to waive Damian Lillard. Now, they owe him $113 million on his contract, and they decided to stretch it over the course of 5 years. It's the largest stretch provision in the history of the NBA. So they're going to owe Dame $22.5 million per year for the next 5 years. That's unbelievable. Now, according to Chris Haynes, Dame was shocked by the news, and apparently, according to Chris Haynes, he found out the way we all did on social media. I was on the golf course this morning, and someone looked over and said, "Hey, the Bucks just waived Damian Lillard." I was like, "Wait, what?" So Dame now, for the first time in his career, will be able to select his next team as a free agent. He's never had that choice. He was drafted by Portland. He played for the Trailblazers and eventually was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. And unfortunately for Dame and the Bucks, that pairing between him and Giannis never materialized. They couldn't quite figure out the right recipe on the floor, and then injuries derailed it with the critical and unfortunate Achilles tear for Dame. So now he's going to rehab. I believe he's doing so here in the Rose City. And there's no pressure for him to pick or sign with a new team right now. He's taken care of financially over the next 5 years from the Bucks, but he can continue the rehab. He could choose to find a team right now, or he can wait. And maybe he wants to look at the landscape next year and make a decision. Now, with Dame being waived and stretched out over the course of 5 years, what do you think the biggest question is I've gotten or have received, or maybe that you've talked about with your buddies at work or via text? I think you know what it is. Should the Trailblazers bring back Damian Lillard? Now, I believe Chris Haynes in his report said 2 teams to keep an eye on, the Miami Heat and the Portland Trailblazers. And so I've given this, some thought since I got the news. And I'm going to be honest with you. And I love Dame. You love Dame. We all do. He's a franchise great. He's always going to consider this home. He was one of our own. The Blazers drafted him. They developed him. And we had a chance to watch him develop into an all-NBA player. I mean, Dame is a special individual. He loves Portland. Portland loves him. And he's always going to have a place in Trailblazer history. But on the flip side, what we are seeing right now from this front office with Joe Cronin and his entire team, including assistant GM Mike Schmitz and head coach Chauncey Billups, they have a plan. They clearly have a plan to get younger, to get more athletic, and to add players who can play both ways, and they want to win with defense. They want to be a tough team. They want to grind. They want to get after it. They want to defend, and they want to do so with versatility. And that's what we're seeing right now with the roster. Just look at the young guys that they brought in. They just drafted Young Hansen from China. He's a big with exceptional passing, incredible length. Donovan Clingan last year. You've got Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, and then the 2 dynamos at forward with Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara. And they just added Drew Holiday, who is a defensive-minded two-way player. This team has got a plan that's been put in place by Joe Cronin. And I think that they need to continue to work on that plan and see that plan through. I do not think that bringing back Dame right now would be in the best interest of the team based on where they're headed, what they're trying to accomplish, and what they want to get done. And on the flip side, I don't think at this stage in his career, assuming the rehab goes well, that Dame returning to Portland would be in the best interest for him. Now, I do know from very reliable sources that Dame, and I think he's, mentioned this, he was not happy in Milwaukee. And he wasn't happy in Milwaukee because he was a long ways away from his kids. He likes to be out here on the West Coast. He's from Oakland. Obviously, he spends a lot of time in Portland. He loves being a dad, and he did not like to be away from his kids. So that was a difficult transition for him. He goes through a divorce. He's traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. He loves being a dad. And he's got that distance between him and his kids. That was a brutal transition for him. It was tough, and he's spoken to that on more than one occasion. But for him now, at this stage in his career, and he's got his first opportunity to choose where he might want to play, I would think he would want to choose a place where he would have an opportunity to go out and compete and win. And not only that, but go into a place where, maybe if he's able to rehab and get back to being 100%, that he'd be able to start. For the Trailblazers right now, the most important thing they've got to accomplish is to continue to put their young players in a position to play and develop. Internal development, playing time, and experience. That's what they need. And the biggest thing, and I've talked about this time and time again, but the most important thing in my mind for this whole, rebuild and transition to work out, it's all about Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp. Yes, Tamani Kamara and Denny Avdia are great. Yes, Donovan Clingan showed promise as a rookie. But those 2 guys, Sharp and Scoot, their development and what they become is going to have a lot of impact on what this rebuild turns out to be. They need those 2 players to hit, and that means you need to put them in a position to succeed. And I just don't think bringing Dame back would be the right answer. Now, yes, the Blazers do need shooting. They need scoring. And they're going to find that. And they're going to pursue that. And for Dame, He's never been a great defender. And I would imagine the Achilles injury is going to take away some of his athleticism, or at least to a degree. He won't be the exact same player. But the one thing Dame's never going to lose is his ability to shoot. So that's where I come out on that. Now is not the time to bring back Dame. The Blazers have a pathway, a plan, and they need to execute that. And I think sometimes this happens to me because I like looking back and remembering the good times from my past. I like nostalgia. I like looking back and remembering how certain things were when I had different people in my life, different experiences, different things going on. And so I think part of us is always looking a way to recapture some of that stuff from the past when things were good. And I think we look at Dame the same way as Trailblazer fans, where it's like, man, wonder if we can bring him back and recapture some of that magic. But I just don't think that's the best course of action for the team. I don't think that's the best course of action for Dame. Now, I was talking with someone earlier. I think they made a great point. Dame's going to spend a lot of time in Portland going through his rehab. He's a free agent now. The Blazers open up the practice facility to Dame. Let him work out there. Let him rehab there. Whatever work he needs to get in, let him be there. That's fine. And then he can pick where he wants to be and where he might end up once he's healthy and he can showcase what he can do. But that is a big number. The Bucks, after they got that deal done with Dame, they went out and gave a boatload of money to Miles Turner, 4 years, $107 million. I also saw that Jakob Poeltl got like 4 years at $104 from the Raptors. Boy, what a great day and age we live in when Jakob Poeltl can be a $104 million man. Jakob Poeltl seems like a decent player, but $104 million? It is amazing what some of these dudes are making in the NBA. It's crazy. But Miles Turner, longest tenured Pacer, 10 years in Indiana, and all the talks every offseason about Miles Turner and all the different teams are going to try and make a trade for him, and now he'd be unloaded. He was mentioned in so many different trade talks over the years, and they never made the move, and now they lose him as a free agent. And he signs and gets a big deal from the Bucks. That's a good signing by Milwaukee. He'll come in and get the job done. So that's it. That's where we're at. Dame is no longer with Milwaukee. Crazy. Crazy times. And they stretched him out over 5 years, $22.5 million per year for 5 years. It's going to be on their books. That is wild. It's crazy. But sometimes as an organization, you have to recognize, and a lot of organizations don't operate this way, but I think the best organizations, they can look at something and say, you know what? We went in a direction. We tried it out. It didn't work. It didn't cash in. Let's cut our losses and move on. And unfortunately for Dame, he got hurt, had a serious injury, and it derailed the track that he was on. And this is another good example why I'm all about players getting whatever they can get, because you never know when an injury like that's going to pop up, and at least Dame's protected. But he'll rehab. He'll put in the time. And I know that injury was tough on him, but I think sometimes the best way for athletes to recuperate from something like that, put your heart, mind, body, and soul into the rehab and do whatever is necessary to get yourself back so you can look back at that mountain you climbed and you'll be in a much better place. But I would not add Damian Lillard to this roster based on the pathway that the Trailblazers are on right now. They're all about adding defensive players, young players, multi-dimensional players. Like, they're reshaping the roster in the image of their coach, Chauncey Billups, and that's a good place to be. All right, when we come back, we'll be joined by Alex Brink, former Coug. He's our college football and NFL insider. We got the We Play Foundation golf tournament coming up in the near future at Langdon Farms, so we're going to touch on the golf tournament. I'll get his take on Texas State joining the Pac-12, and he was just at Elite 11, so we'll get some insight on the quarterbacks that are up and coming. Alex Brink is up next. The Godfather will join me at 4:20. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. This is pretty awesome. The fifth annual We Play Golf Open is coming up in a few weeks, Monday, July 21st at Langdon Farms. It's going to be a shotgun-style tournament, and joining us now to discuss that and some football matters is our college football and NFL insider, Alex Brink, former Washington State Cougar. Alex, man, it's great to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Happy summer. It's here in full force.
Oh, I love it, man. The weather's perfect right now. The golfing conditions are great, and I can't wait for the golf tournament coming up in a few weeks, and we'll touch on that here in just a moment. But I always love getting a chance to talk to you this time of year because you have been a part of – how many years you been a part of Elite 11 now?
Boy, this was year 10,
Wow.
if you can believe that. 10 years. Yeah, it was pretty as I was in L.A. for the finals just a few weeks ago, they had us introduce ourselves to all the athletes and parents, and I was counting up the years. I was like, man, 10 years ago, I was working with Tua Tagovailoa over there at Nike's campus. It was my first time as a part of Elite 11. It was pretty cool.
Now, with Elite 11, like, what are your specific duties? What types of things do you do with the athletes, the football players, when you're there?
Yeah, it's an interesting setup. I mean, one of the great things about Elite 11 is we talk a lot about process, a lot of it about being, how we take these really high-level athletes. I mean, the 20 best high school quarterbacks in the country that are seniors to be, how do we make them just a little bit better, 1% better? Because they're all incredibly physically gifted. A lot of them have had, training from wherever they came from. And, there's really about 8 of us as quarterback coaches that get brought in from all across the country. And I mean, some of these other quarterback coaches people have probably heard of, guys like Quincy Avery, who works with Justin Fields and Josh Dobbs and a ton of the NFL, Justin Hoover, who works with Drew Lock, and Jake Heaps, who works with Russell Wilson. I mean, these guys, this is what they do, right? And I'm lucky to be a part of such a talented group of coaches. And when we're there, we spend 3 or 4 days, a mix of immersive off-field and on-field experiences for these athletes. And when it comes to the on-field stuff, it's things like putting them through a live pro day, similar to what they would do as they head out into the NFL draft, and have to have everybody watching them, eyes on them, throwing routes on air to receivers, and every ball is graded at a really high level, just like if an NFL scout was watching you, right? And seeing how you react to that, getting them in some high-level drill work and seeing if they can take some new concepts and work on those and get better, and then taking them into the classroom and getting them on the board and getting them doing film study and things like that. So myself and those 7 other coaches, we work really hard to provide a good experience for those athletes and hope that they, again, get a little better and learn a little something in those 3 days.
That's awesome, man. That's right up your alley. A couple of guys I wanted to ask you about. What about Bryson Beaver from Vista Marietta? He's been connected to Oregon. What'd you think about his game?
Yeah, I mean, I got to know Bryson a couple different ways, which was unique. He was originally committed to Boise State, and at the time we had a regional down in San Francisco area, Northern California. So I got a chance to watch him there, get to know him, and then he ended up making it to the finals, one of the top 20. And in that process, decided to open up his recruitment because obviously he was getting better in the off season. And boy, I tell you what, for a guy that was a little bit under recruited along the way and then started to catch his stride, he stood up with those other guys and was in our top 11 at the end. So loved him, loved his size, loved his ability to throw the football. Also a really mature athlete, a kid that understands that this is not the end of the process, right? He got a chance, I think, to commit to Oregon in the last week or so. He understands that there's a lot of work to move going forward. So I think Oregon fans got a good one. They should feel really good about Bryson Beaver.
What about Dia Bell?
Well, Dia Bell, I mean, for those that don't know, he's Rajah Bell's son. And remember, Rajah Bell is a basketball player, ultimate competitor, right, and a guy that was prepared day in and day out. And that's exactly what Dia Bell is. I mean, he ended up winning, was our MVP of the Elite 11, and it was a mix of great physical talent. He's committed to Texas. He's certainly one of the top players in the country, but also his just ability to process information and come and be a pro. And in that environment, Chad, when you've got 19 other guys that are looking to be elite as you and looking to compete, it's highly competitive while at the same time also being collaborative. Those guys that stand out as alphas, you realize how special they are. And Dia Bell really had that, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with his upbringing with a dad that played high-level sports.
What are some of the traits, like when you're watching a quarterback at Elite 11 and you're seeing them, like what are some of the traits that jump out at you where you're like, okay, that's going to translate well to the next level? How do you see it through your eyes as a quarterback and a guy who coaches?
Sure. All these guys are, strong. Some of them are taller or shorter, depending on, the size, but they're all strong. They all have, relatively sound mechanics. And a lot of it, what I see is, when the pressure ratchets up a little bit, which, sometimes it's hard to believe that, hey, when you're not in pads and there's nobody rushing you, how can there be a lot of pressure? Well, this is that unique environment where there's so many eyes on you. There's so many peers with you that you're trying really hard to perform at the highest level. And that creates that similar style of pressure. And so these guys that manage that pressure and they can still go execute, I find to be the ones that seem to stand out. And some experiences that, some guys that people have recognized, Tua was one that tied to a lot, Tua Tagovailoa. Just was, very calm and collected, could handle all those pressure situations really well, was so impressed with him along the way. C.J. Stroud was another one. C.J. Stroud entered the Elite 11 as the 20th ranked guy of the 20 that came in, right? Kind of an afterthought, and was so good after 3 days that he vaulted up and he was the MVP over Bryce Young that year. And so you see those guys rise to the occasion. And I think that's where, like, say, a guy like Diabell, he rises to the occasion out of that crop. And in general, the stats we often give is, 13 of the last 14 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks are Elite 11 players, and the only one that wasn't was RG3 because he was running track during that time. So, it goes to show you that, it's a pretty proven process in that regard.
We're talking to Alex Brink, our college football and NFL insider from E4 Sports. All right, we got big news for the Pac-12 this week. Texas State has agreed to join the conference, and they're going to be a full-fledged member with the rebranded 2026. And this is important, Alex, because now that puts them at 8 schools that play football, which gives them that FBS mark that they needed. What are your thoughts on the addition of Texas State?
Well, I think it's unique in a lot of ways, right? It's obviously a departure just in general from what we all know in the Pac-12, which is, kind of staying on the West Coast primarily. The additions of Colorado and Utah and the Arizona, the Four Corner schools kind of changed that to some degree along the way over the 100 years or so of the Pac. But in general, we kind of all knew what it was. So the idea that you dip down into Texas, I think has a lot of merit, right? It's a huge football state. All those schools down there that are playing football at a high level invest heavily. They have the ability to carry a national profile, and I think Texas State is one of those teams that's on the rise. It's not quite there yet, but this move starts to get them in that conversation. And for the Pac-12 in general, right, it widens your footprint, which matters for recruiting and matters when it comes to your media rights deal, and ultimately can help you expand a little farther east to go maybe get some other schools and get to 10 schools eventually, right, 10 or 11, when you think about the basketball element. And so, I liked it in that landscape. I think it's a unique change that, again, brings some more eyeballs to the Pac. And ultimately, the most important thing you alluded to, you get to the 8, you can really start having these very real conversations with additional media partners, go on top of that CBS deal, which I think was fantastic, and try and round that out and then start looking at the future.
All right, so it's basically been a year since Oregon State and Washington State were left high and dry. So now when you look at the things that have been done, they just added Texas State. What do you think about the work that's been done to get the Pac-12 back on the map?
I think all the people involved have done everything possible to give the Pac-12 a chance and give Washington State and Oregon State, and because they've kind of been leading the charge, a chance to maintain that similar profile that they had in the old Pac. And, in the end, as you look at the landscape of college football, as long as this group is in the mix and competitive and winning football games, they're going to have a representative in the playoffs, right? Whoever comes out of the Pac-12, assuming that they're not a 2-loss team, is going to have a chance to be in the playoff, in my opinion. And so I think it's a league that still competes at a high level. Everybody talked about kind of, Power 4 went to Power 5, or Power 5 went to Power 4 in the last few years. I think Pac-12 has a chance to sneak back in that Power 5 conversation. Now they got to prove it over the next few years, but between Washington State, Oregon State, Boise, Fresno, some of the teams that we know that have been good over the years, I think there's a chance for them to maintain that profile and continue to compete at a high level, especially with that CBS deal, which gets you some very good visibility over the year.
No question about it. One more football question for you. Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the Steelers. It looks like Pittsburgh's going all in on this season. His offensive coordinator is Arthur Smith. What do you think about the fit for Rodgers in Pittsburgh?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays out, mostly because obviously the Steelers have been a kind of a run-first team under Arthur Smith, and that may have had to do with quarterback play and kind of receiver play in the end. Aaron Rodgers is going to want to throw the ball a little bit more, although he understands the importance of balance and play-action pass. I think the moves they've made, right, going out, and getting great wide receiver talent, going and getting Aaron Rodgers, trying to build up the defense. Like you said, they're trying to make a run at this thing. I think they're tired of, early exits. It's a proud franchise that feels like it needs to compete for titles. And this is kind of in my opinion, your best way to present to the fan base that you want to do that. And if it doesn't work out, in the end, it's okay because you can go find a young quarterback in the draft here in the next couple of years. But there's really no other good options, in my opinion, in this kind of short to medium term in the free agent market or to trade for. And so I like the move in that regard.
That's awesome. You and your partner with E4 Sports, Ryan DePaula, one thing that you guys believe in is the We Play Foundation, which I want you to tell me about. But it's hard to believe now, but we're coming up on the 5th annual golf tournament out at Langdon Farms, the We Play Open. And this is a chance where 100% of the proceeds go to support the We Play Foundation. And Langdon Farms right now is in great condition. It's always a good time, but this is something you two believe in, isn't it?
100%. I mean, we started the We Play Foundation, with the mission of making sure that sports are accessible to young people, right? And, with rising costs and everything involved with that, we want every athlete to have access to whatever programs they're trying to participate in, whether it's their community sport programs or a camp somewhere along the line, or, a program like Roosevelt youth football that we help get all their athletes T-shirts and shorts for their summer training so they could all look the same like the other teams they were playing. Things like that is what we deem as that opportunity for access and reducing barriers in youth sports. And so the We Play Foundation is our effort to help combat that. And with the We Play Open, our once-a-year golf tournament, we raise funds that have helped thousands of athletes over the course of the last 5 years. Just most recently, we ran a free lineman camp for football for offensive and defensive linemen in memory of our one of our former colleagues, James Andrew, and a former Lake Ridge football athlete, Zeke Crowder. We had over 75 offensive and defensive linemen ranging from 7th grade all the way through high school that came out, got in some incredible work, got to hear about mental health and mental health awareness, and just fantastic opportunities, all made possible through We Play and through this golf tournament. So if you get a chance, go check out the WePlayFoundation.org/events. You can see all that we have to offer for the tournament. There's foursomes still available. We've got whole sponsor opportunities. A couple of our higher sponsorship opportunities are still available, like a cart sponsor, a beverage cart sponsor, but also the opportunity to donate in-kind gifts that could be used for a silent auction. So again, like you said, 100% of everything raised goes back into that scholarship fund for young athletes here in the Portland Metro and state of Oregon.
Yeah, the 5th annual tournament's coming up on July 21st. It's going to be out at Langdon Farms, 145 shotgun-style tournament. They're going to have a dinner, auction, prizes, and you can do additional purchases for birdies, eagles, prize tickets. And remember, 100% of the proceeds go to support the We Play Foundation, which is awesome. Now, Alex, E4 Sports, what's your main focus right now as we enter into midsummer?
Big-time opportunities for young athletes getting involved with summer camps. Primarily, we have some of our football skill camps coming up for football athletes that are interested in getting ready for the season coming up. A lot of baseball camps in July and early August. We also have a really cool opportunity at the end of July. We're running a girls flag football skills camp. So girls flag is just such a cool initiative happening in the high school and youth levels, opportunity for young women to get out and play the game of football, right? And so we're providing a camp at the end of July, girls flag camp. We're super excited about that. Registration's available. If you go check out e4sports.com, you can see all of our camp offerings happening right now. We got a basketball camp coming up on July 4th. In the next few days. So if you got a young athlete here in the Portland Metro or Vancouver area, check out e4sports.com.
All right, former Coug Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. Again, go to WePlayFoundation.org/events for details on the 5th annual We Play Open coming up July 21st at Langdon Farms. Alex, I'll talk to you soon, my friend. Thanks for joining the show and shedding some light on the We Play Foundation.
Sure, appreciate it, Chad. Thank you. Take care.
You got it. There's Alex Brink. Love him to death. And that tournament is a blast. WePlayFoundation.org/events. I'll be out there. Brink's going to be out there. Ryan DePaulo. And a lot of different athletes and people just having a good time playing golf and doing it for a very good cause. All right, let's go back out to the phones. This guy here is one of my favorite callers. Let's go to Tim in Milwaukee. Tim, my friend, the stage is yours. Fire away.
Thanks, as always, for taking my call, Chad. I would just want to say that I absolutely 100% agree with you about Dame Lillard. We would be relying on him to express traits that were never intrinsic to his game, like defensive intensity or playing within a system that requires him to orchestrate an offense beyond like a high post pick and roll. In Dame's defense, though, he does kind of fit or replicate Portland, Oregon culture in that he's kind of quote unquote good enough. But I would really like to see a new horizon and new expectations for the Trailblazers, because I would really like to see this new fan base experience what you and I experienced in the 90s. I feel like there's a sense of community that comes with a winning trajectory, and I would really like to feel that continuity again. And I just want to also say props to Milwaukee, because they are brilliantly going for the jugular now that Indiana and Boston have been kind of compromised by, Scott Foster deliberately extending the series to the point of catastrophic player injuries. And then lastly, Chad, and, I love you guys and I respect the program, but I have to issue a very diplomatic in-your-face to Chris Burkhardt that 3 years ago, told me that you should not uproot any one of your major all-star players or anybody that's, a good community member on the team. And I just want to say that 10 million Elvis fans can't be wrong, and 2 NBA teams can't be wrong. Chris Burkhardt, in your face. Love you, Chad, and thanks for taking my call.
I appreciate it, Tim. Thank you. Anytime you want to give Burkhardt a piece of your mind, I'm all about that. Yeah, that's the way I feel about Dame. I love him just like everyone else. He's awesome, and he's always going to be a part of this franchise. He's an all-time great here in Portland, and he loves the city, and he spends a lot of time here. But right now is not the time for the Blazers to go after Dame. They are going in a different direction with a plan, and they're executing that plan. And that's why they've got to continue to build and find these young pieces that fit what they're trying to do. And I love the roster right now because they're continuing to load up on versatile players that can play both ways. And that's where they want to be. If you want to win in a small market, you've got to draft well, you've got to develop, and you've got to continue to push forward like that. And that's what the Blazers are doing. And I appreciate the aggressiveness and the cojones that it takes to go out and draft a guy in the first round that was projected to go in the second, in Young Hansen. They clearly believe in him. And a very shrewd move to part ways with Deandre Ayton. And by the way, I've got some details on Ayton. Jason Quick unloaded on Deandre Ayton. I'll give you some details on that coming up next. We'll talk to the Godfather coming up at 4:20. If you want to reach out to me, 503-248-0620. Big thanks to Alex Brink and Tim in Milwaukee. Brenden Slaughter is here. I am here. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I just walked down to the mailroom here in the iHeart building. It's always a little nerve-wracking when listeners say, oh, yeah, what's the address at the station so I can send you something? I just figured they're trying to send me a dose of anthrax or something to end me so they don't hear my voice anymore. But my man, Scotty Bethune, said, hey, what's your address at the station? I want to send you something. So I walked out of the mailroom to see if it's arrived. I did not see anything. So we shall wait and see what Scotty Bethune is going to send me. It's probably a picture of him after he made his hole-in-one last year. He's probably trying to brag or something. I have no idea what it is. And then Brenden and I were talking. I went in and used the restroom that's right down the hallway from the station or right here in the KPOJ 620 studios. And I took a leak, and it wouldn't flush, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, should I email my boss and let him know the toilet's not flushing? I just elected to do nothing, and I left because it was right after work. And I just found out from Brenden that Burkhart had the same issue with the toilet, but it eventually flushed. It worked itself out. And I felt guilty for not, making a call or sending an email to someone, but it's just too embarrassing. And that's the same boss that I've got to ride with for a couple of hours going up to that meeting in Olympia next week. I already told you, I don't want my bosses to know too much about me. I don't like to over-communicate. I just want them to always think like, man, that Chad guy's always focused on work. That's all he wants to do is just do radio. So that's the space I try and live in. If you want to reach out, 503-248-0620. Jason Quick put out a piece at The Athletic on Deandre Ayton, who, along with the Trailblazers, came to a buyout agreement. And it was actually pretty beneficial for the team because he was scheduled to make just over $35 million this year. They agreed to a buyout of $25 million, which means the Blazers saved $10 million on the cap, which gives them some added flexibility to be able to maneuver and do some different things, including having access to the full mid-level. So it worked out well. And what I appreciate about the move, look, unfortunately, I was trying to think, like, what's the downside to this entire Deandre Ayton situation? Well, I would guess the downside would be is that when you trade Dame and you're getting a package back of picks and players or whatever, well, you're hoping that whatever you get back can eventually be utilized, either as someone that can help your team or assets that you can turn into something else that can help your team moving forward. But Deandre Ayton ended up really not amounting to much. He didn't do much as a Trailblazer, didn't really have a lasting impact, and they were unable to trade him. Not much of a trade market for Deandre Ayton at that number of $35 million. They could have traded him, but they would have had to take back big money to do so. And so they came to the buyout agreement. But what I like about the move is that and this is what more sports teams should do, I'm telling you, the good ones acknowledge a mistake. They acknowledge something that's not working out the way they had hoped, and they get off it. They move on. They don't compound the issue. They say, you know what? We're going to move in a different direction. This is what we're doing. Let's make the most of it and move on. And the Trailblazers did that, so I appreciate that execution. But it's rare in a buyout market where you can see a player give back 30% of their salary, and Ayton was willing to do that. And the benefit for him is that now he's a free agent, and he's free to sign with whatever team he chooses or whatever team decides they want Deandre Ayton. And I hope he goes to L.A. with the Lakers so that he can be a part of the disaster with LeBron in what will probably be his final year with the Lakers, because they're now moving in a direction where it's all about Luka, because he's the future, and you got to build a team around Luka, not LeBron, and that's the way it's got to be. And now with Jason Quick, in this piece he put out, I just want to read a couple of excerpts for you. This is Jason Quick of The Athletic on Deandre Ayton. Quote, but in the end, they, meaning the Trailblazers, couldn't live with his, quote, bad ways. The tardiness to team flights and practices, according to a team source, the skipping of rehabilitation appointments, fans saw him slam chairs when he was taken out of games, and a team source said that there were tantrums in the locker room when he was sidelined for poor effort. Quick notes Ayton's talent is undeniable, and he can provide some good production on the court, but in the end, his lack of self-awareness was the critical flaw. after Ayton's arrival. Quick said, Billups believed he could instill some work ethic, humility, and professionalism into Ayton. But with a host of promising players who are still forming habits, the Blazers came to the conclusion that Ayton's bad ways weren't a tenable part of the team's future. He also went on to write, but now, as the Blazers' rebuild is starting to show some signs of promise, it is clear the organization believed Billups couldn't change Ayton. So Portland did what so many teams are reluctant to do. They admitted a mistake and cut ties. Exactly. All right, it didn't work. Let's move on. We don't need to compound the problem. And the good news is for Portland, they're going to eat that $25 million now, and it will come off the books after the season, which is good. And they've got more flexibility to work with right now. And more importantly, they're going to thrust their young players into a larger role, meaning Donovan Clingan will be your starter at center. Hopefully, we pray that Robert Williams III will be able to contribute and play in more games this year because you're going to need people to eat up minutes at that center position. They've got Duop Reef, who can play some minutes at center, but he's obviously a different style of player. And I did not think so when they made the move, but maybe young Hansen is going to be able to come in and play limited minutes as a rookie. And I'm a big fan of that because I firmly believe the best way to learn is to be playing on the job instead of observing, as long as you don't get beat up to the point where you lose confidence. You know, we see that a lot with young quarterbacks in the NFL where they get out there, they start to play, they struggle, and then they're unable to get the job done, and it kills their confidence. But if young Hansen is able to get out there and get a feel for the NBA game, I mean, if you've seen the highlight package, the Trailblazers have done a good job of putting some of the highlights out there. They're floating around now of, you know, his work in China. I mean, the guy moves really well for a big dude. He moves really well. And we know this from the conversation I had with Mike Schmitz. They believe his passing ability is elite. Like, that's the ultimate skill level. The passing they love. And so I can't wait to see it. But getting some minutes this year to be able to bring him along as a youngster and get him out there on the floor where he gets more comfortable with the NBA game, the way it's officiated, some of the physicality of the guys he's going to be facing, that's pretty exciting. But with the move to get Ayton out, I mean, Hansen almost definitely is going to see minutes this year. And what if Robert Williams III is unavailable because of injury? Then you'd have Clingan and Reef. There's going to be minutes there for Hansen. And we know that Billups already said he does not envision, you know, playing Hansen and Clingan together. So there you have it. That's what's up. But in the end, they couldn't live with his, quote, bad ways. Tardiness to team flights, practices, the skipping of rehabilitation appointments. Yay. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. The Godfather Dwight James coming up at 4:20. Telephone number 503-248-0620. And you can also join us on YouTube, youtube.com. And just search Rip City Radio 620. We stream all of the live shows from studio. All right, appreciate your time on this Tuesday. You've got your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, what's up? It's now 4 o'clock. Chad here. The Milwaukee Bucks have waived Damian Lillard. The $113 million left on his contract is going to be stretched, and the Bucks will pay Dame $22.5 million per year for the next 5 years. And for the first time in his career, Lillard's going to be able to pick a team, his next team, as a free agent. In addition, the Bucks have agreed to a 4-year, $107 million deal with Miles Turner, who was the Pacers' longest tenured player, having spent 10 years in Indiana. Elsewhere, Jakob Poeltl gets $104 million over 4 years from the Raptors. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got paid. He and OKC agree on a 4-year supermax worth $285 million. The Nuggets have a legit backup to Jokic now. They trade Dario Saric to the Kings in exchange for Jonas Valanciunas. And from the NFL, Darren Waller is coming out of retirement to join the Dolphins. The Giants had his rights, and they're getting a 6th-round pick in return. All right, shenanigans here in the studio. I'm not going to lie. I had to pinch it for the last segment from like 3:44 up until 4 o'clock. Like, I had to pee like a racehorse, but I got stuck talking to somebody, and I asked Brenden how much longer until we're back from the commercial break. He said 30 seconds. And I'm like, oh, crap, I'm going to have to pinch it. So I did, and then I got derailed again because I went out to look for that package that Scotty Bethune sent over, the anthrax or whatever, and I couldn't find it. And then I ran into someone else, and they started talking to me. And for the life of me, I do not understand how someone can work in a radio building. They should be able to look at my face and know that, like, look, I got to be somewhere right now. Like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, the update starts in 45 seconds. But sometimes sales doesn't really understand that completely, and whatever, I understand that. So, anyways, I went and I looked at the clock, and I was like, okay, I got 40 seconds. So I ran into the restroom to take a quick leak because I thought I could make it back in time, and it ended up being a 2-stager. And so I couldn't stop it. I can't stop once I start. I don't do that. I don't think it's good for your health. I've never been told that by a doctor, but once I start, it's got to all come out. That's just how I operate. And I got back in the studio. Thankfully, Brenden added another 30 seconds on some promo or whatever. But I ran into the studio with my pants unzipped and my belt flapping around. Thank God no one else was in the hallway because that would have been very embarrassing. And there you have it. I mean, there's not many people in the building now because a lot of people work from home. So it feels kind of like my own house. I walk around the office building. I don't run into anyone. But today I've been bombarded by people. And those are the worst people in life where you run into people, and I don't like this, but I love talking to people. Like I would classify myself, for lack of a better phrase, a people person. I like conversation. I like to interact with human beings. I like connection. I like friendship. I like to talk to people. I know that's a big surprise for someone that likes to talk and does it for a living, but I really do. Some people that work in radio, they're very weird. Like on the microphone, they're very outgoing and outspoken. But then off the mic, they're very like, I don't know, introverts, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm not like that. I like people. But the problem I have is like when I'm trying to get somewhere, there's always that one person that you run into them and they start yapping. But the problem is they put you in a position to be a bad person because they don't know when to shut the trap. And they just keep talking. And I'm thinking, man, I got to be somewhere. And so I end up having to say, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got to go. But they make you out to be the bad person. I feel awful walking away. And I'm like, why should I feel bad? They didn't know when to shut up. I had to be somewhere. But some people, they just don't read the cues very well. It's kind of like texting. Like, I like texting because it's short form communication. You send a message out, you get your point across, and then boom, you're on to the next thing. But there are certain individuals that they respond with multiple paragraphs. I don't have the attention span to deal with multiple paragraphs. Like if you start over texting me, I'm out. I'm out. I'm on to the next thing. It's just too much. It's too much. I got a text message here from my good friend David Michaelis. I'm a big fan. He said, just want to let you know you are at your best when you're not talking about sports. That overflowing toilet story was awesome. Miss you, man. See you soon. David, you know, I'm a big fan of yours. I love running into you at Moda Center. No, what happened was the reason why I had that pause before I just left the building and didn't tell anyone. I remember when I was like, it was probably 17 years old. This is back when I was working at Health Experience. And this athletic club that was over in Vancouver. And my boss, who I was really close with, his name was Nelson. And Nelson Mello, he was a great man. And he's still around. I haven't seen him in a long time. But he was kind of like a fatherly figure. I worked for him for 8 years. He taught me so many different things. He kind of took me under his wing and taught me about business and sales and all these different things. He's a fascinating man, and you know, he's capable of so many different things. He can build, he can sell, you know, he's into business. He's done so many different things. But I remember one time we were doing some work with the company truck, me and another gentleman. And I wasn't driving the truck, but he was. And I can't remember his name. Maybe it was Brian. This is a long time ago. This was like back in like 1993. And so we had to haul some shrubbery or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I want to say it was like we had to haul some shrubs out that were in the parking lot, but we had to get rid of the mess. So we were moving it to a different spot. And so we used the truck, the company truck, and we delivered it, and we dumped it off, and then we took the truck back. Well, apparently, I didn't know this, but the tailgate, or there was something that happened to the truck through the process of delivery. And when Nelson utilized the truck the next time, he noticed the issue, and he was furious that we did not report or let him know that there was damage done to the tailgate in this whole moving of the brush. And so he fired the guy. He was like really ticked off, and I was like, whoa. And I'm a young guy at the time. I'm 17 years old. I'm like, you're going to fire him over that? But his whole point was, like, there was a problem that he was aware of. He did not mention it when he should have, and the lack of communication is unacceptable. So what I'm trying to say is that I thought about that whole incident back in 1993 when I decided to walk out of the building yesterday when the toilet wouldn't flush. Probably should have sent an email. It probably should have told someone.
Could have told us, Chad, like high key.
I could have, but you guys had just started the show.
We did. And I remember telling Burkhardt, I'm like, I don't know if it was Chad or, you know, honestly, it might have been me that noticed it first, but I'm like, why is there no water pressure in this toilet? And then Chris, like, we got to hold it, man. That was a long time to hold it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not emailing my boss. Hey, dude, I just snaked the toilet. It won't flush. I'm sorry.
Maybe you got to be more cautious about those public use toilets, knowing that, you know, if they don't flush, Chad, I think number one, you can live with. Number two, you're going to, you know, shut that door.
Oh, my goodness. It's horrible. And there you have it. And then sometimes I'll get changed. Like if I have to change clothes, I do it in the studio. But we got this big window right by the studio. I get so accustomed to no one being in the building. Like the other day, I was in here dressing into other clothes. So I'm like standing here in the studio in my underwear, and I see someone coming down the hallway. I drop to the floor so no one could see. Freaked me out. All right, just got a message from a gentleman, Dave. And he reached out, and he said, hey, Chad, I'm a longtime listener and live on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. One, I'm excited for Texas State to move into the Pac-12 so I can watch my Oregon State Beavers as they compete in conference games now, hoping for UTSA to join them. The second, my son is going to a Eurobasket Summer League in Las Vegas during the NBA Summer League, and we are excited to see young Hansen play 1 or 2 games during the Summer League. I appreciate what you do and how you connect to your listeners. Well, you're welcome, my friend. Have fun down at Summer League. That's awesome. By the way, my name is David Canfield. My family took a trip up to Oregon a couple of summers ago, and you gave us a coffee recommendation that was perfect in Portland. I sent him to Coava. That's the name of the place. I think there's a couple of locations. I'm always looking for, like, a great cup of coffee. I would say Coava it's always hard to say what the best is, but I haven't had a cup of coffee that was better than Coava. Like, they're spectacular. And I drink Americanos. I like it black. I don't add sugar, cream. I don't need any of that. I just want it black. But that Americano from Coava is about as good as it gets. Sensational. Stumptown's really good. A barista makes a fine cup of joe. But Coava is about as good as it gets. Really fantastic. And Dave went on to say, dude, you're amazing. Great memory. My wife and I loved it. I've now waved the damn flag for Oregon State at 3 college game days, and I've loved every experience. And he just sent me a picture of the flag.
My man.
Yeah, Brenden supports your decision to wave the flag
I
at
do.
college game day. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. So what was the moral of that story? Oh, yeah. I guess the moral of the story and what I learned from Nelson was, yeah, if you see a problem, you got to speak up. I didn't speak up last night, and I feel bad about that. And then I left Brenden and Chris to deal with it. That'll happen. But what happened is, this is pretty cool about Nelson, my former boss that I worked for 8 years. So it was 3 brothers that owned the club. It was Larry, Joe, and Nelson. And so I was close with all of them. And the cool thing is that, you know, I've seen their children grow up to become adults. Manny Mello is, you know, I think he coached basketball at Battleground. I think he was the athletic director. I think now he's doing some, you know, life coaching and some training, which is really cool. But a number of them have gone on to become very successful. Joe, unfortunately, passed away a few years ago, and I was really close with him. He was a musician and played the drums. But I think it was for his 60th birthday. It might have been 60. Sandy Mello, Nelson's wife, reached out to me, and she was looking for different, like, mementos or things that we could send over to her for this birthday celebration. And this is probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. Well, I keep a lot of stuff. I'm not a hoarder. Like, I'm very good about, you know, getting rid of things I know I'm not going to use anymore. I think we've all had that experience. Like, you look in the closet, and I just have an honest conversation with myself. I'm like, dude, are you really going to wear that shirt again? You bought it. You wore it once. You know you don't like it because it doesn't fit the way you want. But we keep it in the closet, and it just adds clutter. I don't do that. I have the honest conversation. Are you really going to wear it, moron? And the answer is no, and then I donate. So I get rid of it. But I do keep things that I think, you know, that have some type of meaning. So I remember one of the first meetings I had with him. He was writing a bunch of notes. He had very distinct handwriting, but he was writing a bunch of notes on this legal pad, and it was about business and some of his different philosophies. And it was like 3 or 4 pages. I ended up keeping that. And so I had this for all these years, dating all the way back to 1993. And so what I did is I photocopied it, and I sent her all of his notes so that he could see what he had written to me, because I know he's big on that kind of stuff. And she said it was really nice. There you have it. So there you go, Dave. I just gave you 14 minutes of no sports. All right, 503-248-0620. The Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. I want to get his thoughts on the buyout for Dame and see if that surprised him. What about them, the Bucks stretching out over 5 years at 22.5? I want to get his take on Young Hansen and what he thinks about that draft selection. And then also get his thoughts on, you know, Dame coming back to Portland. A lot of Trailblazer fans would love to see Dame return to Portland and be in a Trailblazer uniform. Does that make any sense? And we'll get his thoughts on the Denver Nuggets. I think of all the teams right now, the top 2 have been the most active and I think improved themselves the most. Really like what Denver has done. They unload Michael Porter Jr., who was unreliable and often injured. They save money in the process. They get back Cam Johnson, and now they've got a valuable backup big in Jonas Valanciunas. And the one thing that Denver has, and you got to give them credit because of all the teams in the postseason, they pushed OKC to the limit. Their size, Denver's size, a legit problem for OKC. And so I like the maneuvers they've done. And a great opportunity for David Adelman as he takes over now for Michael Malone and will be their full-time coach. We'll talk to the Godfather coming up next. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on 620 Rip City Radio. Well, you got to love Boss Skaggs. Very smooth. I'm so happy the Godfather agreed to join us today because a lot of things I want to talk about with him. And he's back on the show, the Godfather, Dwight James. Now, Godfather, so many different things Blazer-wise to talk with, but I want to start with this. A lot of Blazer fans, I'm continuing to get hit up on a daily basis, afraid that they're going to move to Seattle. What's the latest you're hearing on the Blazers? And once again, do you think they'll remain in Portland for the long term?
Complicated question, Chad. I've always believed they'll stay in Portland, and I still do. But I do also know that there is a fear among some people who are attempting to buy the team that it could be moved to Seattle. And it's kind of based on the fact that lately Adam Silver has sort of thrown a bucket of water on expansion. And we do know that your friend Jimmy Dolan in New York has organized a group of owners who don't want to vote for expansion. They want to, they don't want to split the TV money. And I was afraid something like that would pop up. But if Seattle doesn't get an expansion team or it isn't imminent, it wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if our two Seattleites who are looking after this team wouldn't try to be local heroes by selling it to somebody who wanted to move it to Seattle.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I had heard from someone last week, they mentioned the Dolan thing like you did, that he's the one who is raising a lot of fuss about expansion. Now, I had also heard that possibly maybe Jody or somebody else, there might be some people that might be minority owners that would help create that push to Seattle. I was also told that they would use that threat of moving the Trailblazers to kind of force the commissioner's hand in getting expansion to Seattle because they confirmed exactly what you said, that there's frustration growing because we have not gotten the announcement for expansion and the slow play by Silver and the owners to make that announcement.
Yeah, Chad, my fear would be that somebody would say to Bert Cold, Bert, if you were to sell to our group, we've got a nice warm chair for you as assistant general manager of this team. We'd love to have you aboard on the executive side. I'm afraid that would make a big difference. But who knows? I still think it's unlikely, but I won't say now that it's impossible.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing right now. And plus, they've got that arena up there that they put all that money into to renovate, and it would be a great spot for a team, would it not?
Oh, yeah, they didn't renovate that just for hockey. The real motivation all along was to get the Sonics back, and they're not going to rest until they do. They're going to get a team one way or the other. At least that's my feeling, and they deserve it. They deserve an expansion team. To let a team move is a bad mark on the whole league. It's a tough sell to all the other small market franchises around the league. Everybody gets worried that their franchise could get moved, and that's not a good look for the league.
Yeah, I had heard that there could be a couple of different factions inside of Amazon that might be looking to get involved in the NBA. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have. And anywhere that there's a big pile of money, that's where you might find people interested because that's what it's going to take. I hear $4 billion lobbed around as a possible sale price, and I actually believe it'll be higher than that because last I heard, there's 8 or 9 groups interested, and I know 2 of them are local. If they decide to get into a bidding war, the price always goes up.
We're talking to the Godfather, Dwight James. All right, the Trailblazers made a surprise move on draft night by selecting Young Hansen out of China. A surprise from the standpoint that I think most of the people had never heard of him or unaware of him, and he was projected to go in the second round. What do you think about the selection?
Well, the one thing I have said in print on my Substack, Chad, is that I've always appreciated teams that are willing to take a different road than everyone else. And in this case, in a way, they're saying they're smarter than everybody else. They're picking this guy a lot higher than anybody else would have picked him. If Brooklyn would have selected him, it would have been more because of his nationality being somewhat akin to the owner's nationality, and that would be part of that. It wouldn't necessarily be basketball reasons. I appreciate the fact they're willing to do that and their belief in it. However, the scouts I've talked to, the people who've seen him in person, have some reservations. His foot speed isn't great yet. He does have terrific low post moves, which may or may not be valued in today's NBA game. Doesn't have a great length to his shot. There are some, and I don't know how physical he's going to be. The other thing I keep hearing, Chad, is that his hips are too high, meaning his legs are too long probably. And they like guys who can keep that low base at the low block or when rebounding so that they can't be rooted out of position. And those guys who have a low center of gravity have a lot more ability to withstand the kind of physicality at the low block.
What's the competition like over there in China in their basketball league?
Well, the other thing I saw, and John Hollinger wrote a piece about that there are guys over there who've been cut by NBA teams who are really tearing the league up. And that gives you pause. How are their bigs over there? I would guess not real strong. You don't see a lot of them coming over here. I would have reservations about being able to forecast a guy who is pretty good in that league, but not a dominator in that league, as being able to play right away in the NBA. Now, it could be they get him over here. Look, Chad, they know more about him than anybody over here does. We know that. They've scouted him for years. They know a lot more about him. So, in some ways you have to sit and wait and see if what they thought was true. They've pretty much gone all in on the fact that he's going to play. It's going to be Klingon and it's going to be Hansen. That's what it's going to look like at the center spot. I don't think there's any question now. And so they've gone all in on that. There's a great belief in his ability to play. So it's going to be fun to watch and see how it shakes out.
All right, Godfather, the Blazers came to a buyout agreement with Deandre Ayton. Jason Quick today wrote, quote, "But in the end, they couldn't live with his bad ways. The tardiness to team flights and practices, according to a team source, the skipping of rehabilitation appointments. Fans saw him slam chairs when he was taken out of games, and a team source said that there were tantrums in the locker room when he was sidelined for poor effort." Oh, jeez.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't like going back in the archives, but I'm pretty sure I wrote something similar when they acquired him. This was not exactly a secret within the league. A guy who gets benched during the NBA Finals like he did, there are problems there, and there were attitude problems, and that's why they basically traded him for Yusuf Nurkic, and that kind of tells you something there. And I think that the Blazers were aware of that and figured they could get him straightened out, and that's not always an easy thing to do. And I think it's good that they moved on from him. I questioned all along him being there because of all the young players on the team and him setting a poor example. It's funny, too. All along when he was here, you heard nothing but good things about him. Players love players like him who jokes around all the time. He's not afraid to make fun of the coaches behind their back. He does a lot of things they wish they could do, but they don't have the guts to do it. J.R. Rider was similar. And, of course, J.R. wasn't nearly as well-behaved as DeAndre Ayton, but he was like the life of the party with the Trailblazers. He was that little kid who sat in the back of the room and made fart sounds and made fun of the teacher, and players, teammates love that stuff. But coaches in front offices don't, and it's hard to win with players like that. I think he kind of picked and choose on which nights he played hard. I think it's a relief to Chauncey probably to move him down the road.
Well, the good news is you mentioned fart sounds, so I can guarantee you tonight I'm going to watch Leslie Nielsen on the David Letterman show again with his fart machine. It's incredible.
I would encourage you to do that, yes.
All right, we're talking to the Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. The one thing that was surprising, though, I couldn't believe that, Ayton was willing to give back $10 million. It's rare in the buyout market where you find someone willing to give back 30% of their salary, and that gives the Blazers some much-needed flexibility. That was a surprise.
Well, he's not really giving up anything. He'll get it back because he's going to sign for a mid-level exception of some sort, and actually the non-taxpayer mid-level is $14.1 million. I have a feeling he's going to get that from somebody. Yeah. So he'll make that up. It's just that the Blazers aren't paying it. Another team is. So he's going to be made whole, I think, when he signs. It's just that it lets the Blazers off the hook cap-wise.
Well, we just got to hope he signs with the Lakers, and then he and LeBron can find a way to coexist, and we can watch it blow up in their faces.
Yeah, I think that all Blazer fans should really root for that to happen, because it will be interesting to see how that's dealt with in L.A. And, you just never know what's going to happen down there now. They've made some astute moves just recently, I think, because the new ownership is having an impact already. It won't be long before they find a smart guy to come in and run that team. It'll be run as well as the Dodgers are, which arguably the Dodgers are the best franchise in pro sports right now in terms of the way they're operated.
It's hard to argue that. They are that good for sure. Now, Damian Lillard, in a surprise move, Milwaukee has waived him, and they're going to stretch out the $113 million over 5 years. They're going to owe him $22.5 million per year for the next 5 years, which is the largest stretch in the history of the NBA. Now, as you know, and I'm sure you've heard from Blazer fans today too, a lot of Blazer fans would like to see Dame come back. I just don't think that now, based on the direction of the team and what they're doing with their roster, that would make a lot of sense. Where do you come out on all that?
Yeah, I kind of wrote about that. Just Google Dwight James, Substack.com. But, Chad, I think it's a real simple thing. I think he should come back here if he wants and do his rehab here. And I think the team ought to give him a key to the practice facility, let him use all the weight room, all the rehab facilities they have, everything he wants. He deserves that. He's earned that. And he is a free agent, so he's not under contract to another team. So he's free to do that in terms of the rules, I believe. So they should do that. Now, at the same time, he should sit back, maybe take the whole year to decide where he's going to play, when he can play, and then go wherever it's best for him in terms of winning a championship. I don't believe that's going to be in Portland. That's not the same timeline that Damian Lillard is on. I believe that encouraging him to come here isn't even fair to him. He left because he wants a chance to get a ring. He knew it wasn't going to come here in his timeline. But all of that said, go someplace, Dame. But then later on, when he has the ability to make one last contract deal, come here and finish your career if you want. By then, I think, he's going to be older, be willing to accept a role maybe as a sharpshooter off the bench, a third guard, second guard, third option, whatever, and finish your career here. I think that'd be wonderful for the fans and for him. I think he plans to make his home here. If not, move somewhere else. I mean, anybody who thinks he shouldn't have the ability to do what he wants is crazy. He's a free agent. That means free. And I think fans ought to relax a little bit on, telling the team to try to sign him. The team has a plan. Joe Cronin's got a plan. And I think everyone owes it to him to see how that turns out. Let's let him work his plan. And that plan obviously includes Drew Holiday, who they went out and got. And so you wouldn't want to add another guard to that backcourt. So just leave it alone, relax a little bit on the whole thing, and let it all play out. And I think the Blazers will do the right thing. I think Dame will do the right thing. And I think that's the best way for everyone concerned.
Godfather, I know you and I are both excited for David Adelman. He's now the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. He's got a great opportunity. And, man, that front office has been very active. I like what they've done where they moved Michael Porter Jr. out, who was making a high dollar amount for inconsistent production and often injured. They trade him. They get Cam Johnson, save a bunch of money, and then they also are able to go out and bring in Bruce Brown, who's going to help them, a guy who really got paid because of his work in Denver, and now they got a backup center, a true big, and Jonas Valanciunas to back up Jokic. Their size was a problem for OKC in the playoffs, and now they just got better. I like their moves. I think Coach Adelman's going to have a chance to have success.
I do too. I think it's a great transformation for the Nuggets, who stepped right out right away the first day they could and made some big moves. I've always liked Valanciunas, Chad. I think he's a real smart player who knows how to win and can do the things that help you win. He's a really good player in a backup role, and he's perfect to back up a guy like Jokic, who's a smart player. And so I think you've got two smart players now at the center position, which is a big help in the kind of offense they want to run. Now, Cam is a guy who can play any way you want to play. He'll guard people. And Brown, of course, is a guy who can defend. He can make threes. They're going to be so much better off where David couldn't go to the bench, really. He just didn't have enough. And this year they do. I expect them to get off to a good start. I expect them to be a factor in the Western Conference all season. I think Houston is better. I think Dallas is obviously going to be better. The Clippers are probably going to be better. And I'll tell you, it's going to be rough making the playoffs in the West again this year.
Well, Godfather, I hope that you and Nancy enjoy the 4th of July, one of our favorites, where our dogs suffer because of all the morons who are just lighting things on fire.
Yes.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, we're already hearing it out here, Chad. I don't know if you guys are, but yeah, poor Jack is not a fan of the bombs and the fireworks, and he runs to run under a bed or hide in the bathroom or whatever. And I'm sure that your guy is the same way. It's too bad people do that. And, do it before 7 o'clock if you need to do it, but don't do it at midnight or 11 o'clock. It wakes me up, too. I don't like it.
All right, Godfather. You can check out his Substack. Just Google Dwight Jane's Substack, and you'll be able to find it. And you can read the Godfather's thoughts. Hey, Dwight, I appreciate the time, buddy. A lot of different topics to catch up on, and I'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Chad. Thank you.
There you go. The Godfather, Dwight Janes. Love him. And some good food for thought. But I did hear that. I was talking to someone from Seattle who's pretty well connected, and that's what I had heard, that James Dolan, of course, just another way for him to ruin something. He is the main force fighting against expansion in the NBA. And this is a problem because in Seattle, they've got a brand new arena that's been renovated completely, Climate Pledge. They were expecting to get an expansion team, and now you've got these factions inside of Amazon. Just keep an eye on the story and see how this thing plays out with expansion, because it could put the Trailblazers at risk. And it's going to be interesting to see how things play out, with the governors, with the commissioner, to see if and when they're going to announce expansion to Seattle and Las Vegas. All right, we'll keep things rolling. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can jump on board if you'd like. We've got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsborough Hops, so you can sit in the Rip City Radio row, and we'll give those away coming up at 5 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Has anyone out there seen the F1 movie? I've gotten reports from a couple of friends I trust who told me it was legit. I can't wait to check it out. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number.
Yeah, I'm amped for it, Chad. I got to get out there and see it.
Yeah, there's a couple of movies coming up that I'm excited to see. Superman's right around the corner. Happy Gilmore 2.
Netflix coming right around the corner.
I know. I think this month, July. Why don't you look up the exact release date of Happy Gilmore 2? But yeah, F1 is definitely on my list. Tony in Boring reached out. He says, I wish I was better at the closet conversations with myself. Too much useless clothes. I'm telling you, Tony, one of the best things you can do, it's a cleansing experience, is to just get rid of stuff and just be honest and say, I'm not going to wear this. I'm not going to use this. I don't need it. I don't like clutter. And I have found it to be quite freeing. I help my daughter. It's very difficult to get a teenage girl to let go of things, but I went through the whole process with her just recently. She was wanting more room in her closet. And I said, do you wear everything in your closet? And she's like, no. I'm like, exactly. So I helped her go through each piece of clothing in her dressers and in the closet. And I demanded an answer, yes or no. And she was honest. And so we ended up with a big pile of donations. And then the only thing that was left are the stuff that she knows she's going to wear. And then boom, you're dialed in. Now, she did ask me, the one thing that drives me crazy, I'm sure some of you parents can relate to this. I've always told Kaylee, I'm like, look, if you need something or you want something or you have a question, just come up and ask me. Just get right to the point. You don't need to beat around the bush. Just ask me or tell me what you need, and I'm here to help. So last night, again, she did not just come right out. She's like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm feeding puppy shots. I'm going through the incredible effort that it takes to feed the dog. And I was on the ground. I got to play. Shots is an annoying dog because I have to play with him to get him to eat his food. It's a whole process, and then he eats. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. And it's an every night thing. So that's just the way it goes with him. But I said, honey, what do you want? What can I do for you? And she wanted to go to, what's the name of the place? I think it's called Cookie Crumble. Anyways, she said it was open until 10. I've never been to a Cookie Crumble. It's just not my type of thing. But I said, yeah, I'll take you down there. I did not know that at around 9:15 at night that Cookie Crumble in the middle of Hazeldale would be so packed. The place is crazy. You got people coming in, getting cookies. It's like a late night munchie spot, right? But it was pretty cool to see the process because she ordered it was like their 4th of July cookie. So it's like a cookie with this frosting on top and then like red, white, and blue sprinkles. I don't know what they called it. I think it was like a 4th of July celebration cookie, but that's what she got. But I'd never been there to see how they do it. But they make everything like fresh right there. They decorated the cookie. Like they put the frosting on top and the sprinkles and everything right there. Never seen it happen before, but I thought that was pretty cool. The air conditioning inside that place is elite, and it smelled very good. I did not eat a cookie, though, but she did, and she thanked me. But I'm like, look, honey, in the future, you don't beat around the bush. Don't ask me these weird questions. What are you doing right now? Just say, hey, Dad, will you take me to Cookie Crumble? Yes. You see, we cut out all the nonsense, and we get right to the point. So I'm working with her on that. It's a work in progress. Oh, also, I have figured out that I think I might be Ace Ventura because I do love all animals. I take snacks. I have my snacks that I take with me when I play golf. You know, usually a couple of nutrition bars. I've got things to stay hydrated, especially now because it's getting hotter out there. But anyways, I keep some extra snacks on the side for the animals. So I've got two things now. I've got this little black bird with these red stripes on its wings. So when I go up to the par 3, this bird is always there. So I get out the snack. I had a Bobo, and I open it up, and he flies right over to me, lands on my cart. he gets up on my finger and he eats out of my hand. So I love the bird. We're buddies now, and I've been seeing him now for the last 3 weeks. I don't know how he knows, but he swoops right over to me and sings me a pretty tune. He gets on my finger and eats out of my hand. Well, today, this little squirrel like rolled up on me, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" And I noticed, I was like, "Wait a second, you got one eye." And then, of course, in my mind, I was thinking about the line from Happy Gilmore. You got one eye. Chubs. So anyways, I felt bad for the little guy, so I was giving him snacks. I couldn't tell if he was born without the eye or if maybe it got injured and he doesn't have an eye. But I had to hold the food on one side so he could see. So I play the hole, and I'm walking up the fairway on the next hole. He came all the way across the fairway, like a fairway and a half, and found me again. I gave him some more treats. So I do. I think I love all animals, but I felt bad for the little guy, little cutie with one eye. You got one eye, Chubs. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can jump on board. Hope you're enjoying this Tuesday afternoon. When we come back, it's time to give away some goodies. Not treats for the squirrels, but I got a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops. Your chance to sit in the Rip City Radio row. We're going to give those away next here on the Rip City Drive. All right, 5 o'clock chat here. The big news today, Damian Lillard will become a free agent. The Bucks have waived him, and they're going to take the $113 million that was owed on the contract and stretch it out over the next 5 years. They'll pay Dame $22.5 million per year for the next 5. And for the first time in his career, Dame is going to be a free agent. He'll be able to sit back and pick his next team. Mark Spears is reporting that the calls are coming in. Double-digit number of teams that have interest in Dame. The Bucks, after making that move with Lillard, they agreed to terms on a 4-year, $107 million deal for Miles Turner, who is leaving Indiana after 10 years with the Pacers. Jakob Poeltl gets 4 years and $104 million. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, super paid, got the Supermax, 4 years, $285 million from OKC. And the Nuggets traded Dario Saric to the Kings for Jonas Valanciunas. All right, a couple of messages here. Alec Boy reaches out and says, hey, you should take the squirrel from the golf course to Cookie Crumble. He would have a field day there. Also, I was informed, someone reached out to let me know that I butchered the name. I think it's called Crumble Cookie. Or is it Cookie Crumble? Which one is it, Brenden?
Crumble Cookie.
Crumble Cookie. Sorry. I don't frequent the establishment. Took my daughter there last night. It was my first experience with the place, and it's a pretty good operation.
They kind of came out of nowhere, and I feel like they've really tapped into the youth and big on social media, big, Snapchat, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And, Chad will say whatever it is, like $5.50, $6 for a cookie is a little high, but man, it's a tasty cookie, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it's big. It's a gigantic cookie.
It's huge.
It's not like an Oreo. That thing was massive.
Oh, you usually can when I do go, I usually break it up. You can break it up into like 4 little sweets, man. It's good.
It was really nice to spend the money and realize that I'm going to send my daughter right into a diabetic coma. That thing was massive. And we're not talking about a thin layer of frosting they poured on top of that thing either. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. As was the amount of people there. See, back in the day, if I wanted a late night snack when I was in high school, we always hit Taco Bell. Because back then, before prices started to skyrocket, they had the greatest thing ever called the 59, 79, and 99-cent menus.
Wow.
$5, and you were eating like a king. Let's see here. I'll take a Mexi Melt, Taco Supreme. Give me a Nacho Supreme. Back then, before, you didn't worry about what you were eating. You didn't worry about caloric intake. I didn't care about my macronutrients. I just wanted to have a great experience. So we'd hit the bell all the time. All the time. And it was awesome. 59, 79, 99. I was also paying less than $1 a gallon for gas back in the day, too. Those days are gone. Nice to see the price creeping up near or getting closer to the $5 mark. It's very painful. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. A couple other messages that came in. My man Jeff reached out and said, Chad, I saw F1 at the RPX Cascade 16 in Vancouver. It was awesome. I might have to go again. Go check it out, sir. Hey, Jeffrey, I appreciate the heads up. Thank you so much. My buddy Josh, who I saw this morning, he's already seen it, and he's like, dude, if you want to, jump on that movie after work this week, I'm in it again. And that's how you know a movie's good. When someone's like, yeah, I'll go watch that again, that's a good sign. I like that. Very, very good. Someone else told me there's a Jurassic Park movie coming out. I had no idea. But I do remember my experience when the very first Jurassic Park came out, like back in 93. It was awesome. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. I'm still looking for the package that Scotty Bethune sent me. I'm probably going to have to go down to floor like number 2. last time there was a package delivered without the suite number or floor number that was mentioned, there's some other business. I don't know what they do. I don't even know the name of the business, but they're like a floor below us. But every once in a while, we'll hear like this loud stomping and clapping. They're a raucous group. Whatever they do down there, they're always making a lot of noise.
Want to know my favorite with that, Chad?
With what?
Is with those guys below us, and it's this goes back to my time working on the morning show too. I always found it fascinating how much the elevators could have a nice musty axe smell, maybe even a little dose of some used cigs, like classic.
Yeah, Axe. I know a couple of guys that use way too much of that stuff. It's dangerous. All right, I'll share some thoughts on Dame. Oh, check this out, too. Where were the exact numbers? I'll pull those up. Let's go out to the phones. David down in Salem. Let's talk with him. Dave, welcome back to the show, Rip City Drive. What's on your mind?
Oh, I'm just thinking about music, and I kind of have a feeling with the type of music you listen to, yacht rock and stuff like that, you might even reach back and like Donnie Marie Osmond. Is there any truth to that?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
And one song that I thought that I wanted to dedicate it to you, and I hope you guys can play it, but it's only Puppy Love. You know, dedicate that to Puppy Shots, because that should have been played while you were talking about your dog, because I love pets too, but I just thought Chad has to hear that song when he's talking about Puppy Shots.
Oh, I appreciate that. Now, do you have any animals, David?
Not anymore. You know, I went back to school a few years ago, and it just takes a lot to take care of a pet, you know, and you know, if you're single and working, it's even more difficult, particularly with difficult hours and being away from home, because animals really need another pet or another partner to take care of them when you're gone.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I tell you what, Dave, let me try this right now. You can tell me if this is the one you're talking about here.
It is. There you go, Chad. That's dedicated to you. Take care, man.
503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can reach out to me if you would like. Also, Sean in Damascus has reached out. He goes, that is crazy. When I was little in the 70s, my dad traveled to the Midwest and brought me home a grocery bag full of fireworks, M80s, etc. That was insane. Well, I know. It's crazy. I just can't believe what my parents used to let me and my brother do when I was younger. I mean, we would go to the fireworks stand. It was like back then, it was like buy one, get one free. So I'd buy these firecrackers. Like my Nana was loading me up with the explosives, Black Cats, M80s. And the M80s were great because you could throw them in the pond and they would still blow and water would just go everywhere. And you put them in mailboxes and it would just blow the front off. So my dad had a strict talking to us about where to utilize, what we could blow up, what we couldn't blow up, and how to be careful with them. The Roman candles, the bottle rockets. I think they eventually outlawed the bottle rockets in Oklahoma because of fires. But yeah, I was totally into that stuff back then. What young boy isn't into explosives and fire? Yeah, fire. Yeah, it was crazy. But buy one, get one free. They were cheap back then too. But I got in trouble. I think I've shared this story before. I was 17. I'm living out here. So my Nana was out here visiting on vacation, and she went up with me to exit 88B off I-5. It's just north of Centralia. The exit's right up there by where Great Wolf Lodge is at. But if you take exit 88B, they've got the Indian fireworks up there. And I went up there recently with Kaylee, like a couple of years ago, because we had stayed a couple of nights at Great Wolf Lodge, and she wanted some fireworks. So I thought, well, we're close. We might as well stop by. They've set it up now. It's like a freaking, it's like a strip mall of fireworks. When I went originally back in 93, it was one stand. And it was great because they had all the big-time M80s and M1000s, firecrackers. They had everything I could possibly want. But now when you pull in, it's like this parking lot, and they just got like 20 fireworks stands set up all in a circle. So you just walk around and check and see what they got. But when I went originally, there was like, someone told me when I went up there, they said, yeah, when you're up there at the stand, ask if they've got anything bigger. And this big dude, like, motioned me over, and we walked back into this room, and he had like, ping pong balls filled up with explosive, like these things that I didn't buy any of that stuff, but I just couldn't believe, like pipe bombs, you named it. They had everything. It's crazy. But yeah, it's like you pull in now, it's like they got all these different fireworks stands. But in 93, so I was 17. I was with my buddy Jason Vickery, who was 18. Critical note there. 17, 18. One's a legal adult, one's not. I was the 17-year-old. So we went up to, I had those fireworks that my Nana got me, and we're out there at Vancouver Lake popping off firecrackers, and we got busted by a biker cop. This guy rolled up on a bike, like on a mountain bike, and he's like, yeah, can I see your license? I'm like, what? And it was a biker cop. We got busted, and Jason, because he was 18, had to pay like a $500 fine for illegal fireworks. I got to go through the diversion program because I was not a legal adult. I think my fine was like $25. The only downside is that I got reintroduced to this guy named Orlin. He was like my caseworker when I got busted when I was 15 for having marijuana at high school. And he told me at the time, like back when I was 15, I went through this whole diversion program, and I had to go to a couple of classes. And basically, it was a horrific experience back then. I got suspended from school. My dad had to come in from work from downtown Portland to come and get me at school. That was a big ordeal back in the day. I got my permit suspended, so I couldn't get my license or get my permit back until 90 days after my 16th birthday. So at that time, I was able to finish. So think about that. All your friends are driving, but because you're a dumbass, you don't get to drive when you're 16. So I didn't start driving and get my license until like January. So almost 6 months after my 16th birthday because of that experience for being an idiot. And so 90 days after I got my permit back, and then I was able to go back in and finish traffic safety, and then finally was able to get my driver's license. But Arlen at the time, he said, if you don't do anything dumb, then I will shred this file and you'll be as good as gold. But of course I got busted with the firecrackers. So He had to keep my file on hand and did not shred it for another few years, all because of my trip up to exit 88B. And my Nana supported it fully. Oh, there you go. That's the common sense of a young male right there. Is that stuff illegal? It sounds good. Let's go buy a bunch of it. And just start firing it off at Vancouver Lake. It's one thing to get busted by a cop, but a biker cop? Like one time we snuck out, like 8th grade. So we're up there in Mount Vista. A bunch of us snuck out. Like a bunch of us, like towards the end of the school year. And we all snuck out and met up in the neighborhood. There was probably 12 or 15 of us. And my buddy Jeff stayed the night with me, and we snuck out because we had the sliding glass door downstairs. It was easy to sneak out because my parents were upstairs. Well, it's like middle of the night, and we're hanging out inside this house that's being constructed. And I guess we were making too much noise because one of the neighbors called the cops. And all of a sudden, these 2 cop cars roll up, and we got nailed. But the guy jumped out of the car with like this big German Shepherd. I just was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I was okay with that, but getting busted by the biker cop made me feel kind of inferior. The problem is my buddy Jeff was able to duck behind a bush, but I got nailed by the cop. So he got in trouble because I got in trouble. And then when the cop took me home, it's like 3 a.m, and my Nana's out here on vacation again. And so the cop's knocking on the door to take me home, and my Nana answers the door. That was humiliating. She's like, Chad, what are you doing outside? Well, I snuck out and I got busted. That was embarrassing. Because you never want your Nana to think like that you're an idiot, right? But that was one of those bad moments. Sorry, Nana. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive. You can reach out 503-248-0620. You can also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com, Rip City Radio 620. And, of course, I'll have the Rip City Drive tomorrow at 3. Dave Decker going to join the show tomorrow at 3:20. And then Jason Fellman going to join me in studio at 4 to talk about Hairfest here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Chris Burkhardt is with me right now. All right, what's your reaction to what the Bucks did with Dame, waiving and then stretching out that $113 million over 5 years?
Long-term pain for short-term gain? Question mark. Like all this to sign Miles Turner, who was, he's a fine center, but he folded in the finals, man. He was an offensive liability,
and he was probably the fourth best defender on the floor for the Pacers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Siakam was everywhere. Nebhard was everywhere. Hallie was decent till he got hurt. I mean, everyone was. Yeah, it's a weird move. I don't like it.
It's bizarre. But for Dame, it's got to be nice for him because for the first time ever, he'll be a free agent. And according to Mark Spears, there's double-digit number of teams calling, wanting his services. It's got to be nice to be able to sit back and, kind of pick the spot that you think the best fit belongs with you, and then you can try to win.
Yeah, good for him in that aspect, right? He's going to get a chance here. There's going to be, obviously, like you said, Spears has been there, plenty of teams who are going to be interested, who are either playoff teams or fringe playoff teams. I mean, Sacramento needs a point guard, right? You could sit there and argue that a healthy Dame might put you over the hump a little bit better, at least on the offensive side, than a Mike Conley in Minnesota, right? So there's teams that are going to be interested for sure.
What would you say to the Blazer fans that want Dame back?
Just practice patience. Trust the process. I think he'll be back eventually. I think that's almost feels like a foregone conclusion. But right now, it just wouldn't make sense. It just wouldn't make sense. He's not vet min guy right now. He's still going to command money. And so you're going to go give this guy a ton of money for a guy who probably still has starting point guard days ahead of him to just completely reset the Scoot timeline and mess with that again. It just doesn't make sense.
No, and he's not a Chauncey Billups type.
No.
In terms of the way he wants to play. They're going to be a team that's going to win with defense next year, which is wild based on what we've had over the last decade plus.
It's
here.
Been a long time since you could say that, right?
Yeah, like the mentality, like the Blazer team you're going to see next year is going to – it's not going to look anything remotely close to what we've been accustomed to over the last, decade plus, which is good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. No, you'll get Dame here, give it another, maybe another 6-7 years, come in, and he's going to be 40 or whatnot, and then he's going to tell the league that he's going to stay here long enough for Dame Jr. to get drafted because he wants to play with him. Yeah. But no, I do honestly think that there's a return in the future, but I do think that's, 3-4 years or more down the road because there's still plenty of good ball in front of him as long as this rehab goes well.
I would say for me, and I don't know what it is for you, I think Denver – I'm just blown away by all the different moves they made. They move out Michael Porter Jr. and get Cam Johnson, so they save money and get a player who's going to be more available. They sign Bruce Brown, who comes back to Denver, a guy that knows the system and is a very versatile player. They get a true big to back up Jokic by turning away Dario Saric and getting Jonas Valanciunas. And they just got Tim Hardaway Jr. on a cheap deal.
Yeah, they've had probably the best offseason, them in Houston. They're in contention.
So they added size, defense, and depth.
And the best part about the move for Valanciunas is, Valanciunas goes into situations like obviously, Sacramento where you got Domantas Sabonis and you're going to play behind him. But I think Valanciunas still has the wheels to be like a starting caliber center when you need him to. And you compare his game to Jokic's, which is impossible to do because no one compares to Jokic. But there's a much more to compare that is like between him and Jokic than DeAndre Jordan and Nikola Jokic, right? Yeah. How much you have to change your offense. Like Valanciunas, he can pass the ball decently for a big man, still has good mobility. So you can do that thing where you run in, you sub out your centers, but you don't have to completely change your offense in doing so. You do it when you're running DeAndre Jordan as your backup center.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a great move.
The Western Conference is getting back to being deep and tough.
With
a number of quality teams.
Yeah, they're the ones who've gotten better. The Western Conference. I mean, Atlanta tried to make some moves. Orlando is making some as well. But it's right now it's Denver and Houston, and then everyone else when it comes to who's had the best offseason.
All right, Chris Burkhardt. Well, I appreciate your time, brother.
Always.
All right.
I'm all hopped up.
I'm sure you are. All right, you guys have a good night. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter. Brenden, have a good night, buddy.
Appreciate you, Chad. See you tomorrow, boss.
All right, you guys have a good night. We'll catch you tomorrow. Rip City Drive at 3. Dave Deckard at 3:20, and we'll talk Hairfest at 4 with Jason Feldman. Appreciate your night. Let's take it to the streets. I'll talk to you tomorrow.